Hello, my name is John Sayer, Technical Marketing Manager, Civil Infrastructure here at Autodesk. Today I would like to talk with you about one of the What's New features in AutoCAD Civil 3D 2018.1, Road Rehabilitation Workflows. Here in Civil 3D 2018.1, one of the biggest features that's available now is the Road Rehabilitation Workflow. So what this is it's a new type of corridor that we have here in Civil 3D 2018.1. So what I'm going to do is take you through a quick demo of how that corridor works and talk about the feature itself. So the idea is from around this area right here at this intersection, this roadway, to this intersection here, we're going to rehab this road. So when I say rehab, we're going to do a mill and overlay. All right, so a lot of new great features in this tool that are going to help us to understand more how this milling and overlay is going to happen. The first thing we have to do is we have to create that rehab corridor. So if you go up in the ribbon under the Home tab and you select corridor, you now have another option. You had corridor before. We could build a regular corridor. All right, in Civil 3D, a regular roadway corridor. Now we can build a rehab corridor. Now this corridor is much like the roadway corridor in how it functions. But there's a couple things that it does automatically for us that are really, really great. So I'm just going to give this a name. We'll call this Road Rehab. All right, we're going to drop down and we're going to use the existing centerline alignment that's right here. And there's an existing ground profile that's out in a profile here in this model. All right, we're going to have it follow the existing ground in that profile for our corridor. So we're going to give it a start region here. All right, the stationing for this particular project is running from north to south. So the beginning station being at the very north, down to the south being the end. So we're going to start around this intersection right here. So I'm just going to pick the end point here. Let me zoom in so I can pick it. That's going to be our start station. We could run this rehab on the entire road, but for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to take a piece of it and show you. So I'm going to go ahead and select the end area where I'd like to end my corridor, my rehab corridor. And we'll just end it right here. All right. Making sure that the target surface is this EG from figures. So this particular data set is a traditionally surveyed data set that used field to finish type functionality. So the line work that you see is mostly figures, survey figures that was generated whenever it was imported from the survey field data. So another way that we will show this workflow is with a point cloud that was done by mobile scanning. And we'll show you how to do linear feature extraction and then pull a surface from this and so on and so forth and use this same workflow we're going to use here. But for the first demonstration, we wanted to show you with a traditionally surveyed piece of data. So I go ahead and hit OK. And what happens is we kick into this rehab corridor editor. So if you see here, we're broken up into three different screens. All right. And just for today's purposes, I'm going to actually select viewport configuration. And I'm going to change my plan view to be in viewport 2 and my profile to be in viewport 3 because I like my plan view here on the left. Then what we'll do, you can see here in the section view, there's nothing built. Well, let's take a look over here in the tool, in the prospector. We can see that there has been a road rehab corridor built. So the road rehab features, it automatically starts to generate a corridor for you, but we need to put in the road or the rehab parameters so that it can completely fill out the corridor for us and generate an assembly. So you don't have to build an assembly for this. It's going to generate one for us, and you can see that it's already started that assembly right here. So I can click in this area, all right, once, or I can click over here in any of these viewports, and I can zoom to this assembly once it's generated. But in order for it to generate, we need to go ahead and give it a set of rehab parameters. So right now, in this particular roadway, I just want, I'm going to zoom into the area that we selected. I have a couple things. I've got my center line that we're going to be going off of. I've got the existing edge of payment on the left, and I've got the existing edge of payment on the right. So we want to start with that. So the lane input here at the top of the rehab parameters, we're going to leave those left lanes 1 and right lanes 1 for right now. If we drop down under this lane parameter, this is where we can start to target things. So like I said, we have the edge of pavement that's existing on the left and the right, so I want to target that edge of pavement with the edge of my lane. So this works exactly like, a traditional corridor would. It's just in a little different dialog box. So I'm going to select this lane width target, and I'll select the ellipsis, and I'll select from drawing, because we're going to pull a feature line, a survey figure, or a polyline. So I'm going to select that cyan line right there. And I want to be sure it's getting the whole thing, because sometimes it didn't, or it doesn't. Whenever it's generating survey figures, sometimes the figures might be broken or the feature lines might be broken a little bit. So we want to be sure we get all of it. So I'll go ahead and select all of that right there and hit enter. And it's going to accept those. I'll go ahead and hit OK. And then I want to change to the right lane property. So right now we're working on the left-hand lane. It says left lane 1. All right, if we added a lane on the left-hand side, it would call it left lane 2. But I want to go to the right-hand lane, so I'm going to arrow to the right. Now we're working on the right lane 1. So I'm going to go ahead and target that particular lane also. I'll hit select from drawing, just like I did the left lane, and I'll pick my cyan line on the right-hand side, and I'll make sure that it's the entire length of my corridor. I'll go ahead and hit OK, and it is now targeted. Now, for right now, that's all we're going to set here, because we don't have another lane that we're going to be adding on to this right now. So we want to drop down into the rehab input. Now, in the rehab input area, under cross slope correction, it's got some things that we can fill out. Well, things that we're going to focus on now are the ideal cross slope. So our roadway that we're looking at might not necessarily be at a consistent -2%. So we need to tell it that that's the goal that we're trying to meet. The ideal cross slope is -2%, so that when we overlay this pavement back, it's got a -2% cross slope. Do we want to use super elevation at this particular juncture? We do not, but we can. Our slope tolerances, if I leave this at 0.5%, it's going to give me leeway of getting to that ideal cross slope. So it may get to like 1.95, and that's tolerance as to how tight we get to the slope. Same thing with lane break slope. Same thing with relative gradient limit. So if you have tolerances there that you want to try and meet, and you want to get it like between 0.5% or say it's 0.2%, this is gonna help us get to that automatically. Now for right now, we're just going to do a level only corridor. The overlay depth we're just going to leave it at 3/10, and the minimum level depth we'll leave it at 3/10 for right now. We'll change this up here in just a second. I'll go ahead and hit it apply, and it fills out our assembly for us in our cross-section view. So you can see we got a lot going on here in the section view. We can see the width, we can see the slope, we can see the offset depth and level depth at that offset. We can see that it is going out and hitting our targets. And remember, the stationing is from north to south, so the left-hand side would be here on the east side, and the right-hand side would be on the west, which makes it a little bit misleading, because left should be left and right should be right, but that's how this stationing is set. So we can see that on the right-hand side, all right, which is this side, you can see how it gets wider here in the plan view. Gets wider here in the plan view, so we're 28.85 feet to the right. So we can change stations. I'm just going to go to my station 2675, and you can see that black line there will move inside the plan view, so I can see where I'm at. If I keep going down to say 2700, all right, I'm right in this area, and we're almost the same width apart. All right, so we're 26.75 to the right and 21.9 or 21.15 to the left. I can start to adjust some things here. If I want to change and make this it's set to level only right now, I could set it to mill only. All right, and I could hit apply, and then we start to see things a little bit different. So this area is now treated as mill. All right, they're going to mill this out, and it is doing it a specific depth, a minimum depth of 0.3 per 0.3 feet. All right, so that's going to be about 3.6 inches, which shows up here in the cross-section area. We can use a mill and level type of vertical adjustment, right, and hit apply, and I'll switch sections here so you can see this just a little bit better. All right, I'll go down to say right here, and gives us a different look to our section. So we can also change this mill level depth, all right, or minimum level depth. We've got our overlay depth. Let's say that our mill minimum is 0.3 also, and we can hit apply, and it will change the look of the section again. All right, so we can see mill and level in this particular cross-section view. All right, so a couple things. I want to go ahead and hit apply, and if I like this, I'm good to go. I can go ahead and hit apply, and I can close this dialog and then hit close for my rehab corridor editor. Now, I did this so that I can show you how to get back to that editor, because ultimately I'll have to get back in and look at it, so I want to know how to get back to that. So if I select my corridor, I go up here in the upper left, I can select Edit Rehab Corridor, and I only have one region, so I'm just going to hit Enter, and it will split back up on my screen to the Road Rehab Corridor Editor. All right. Now, a couple things. This assembly can be used as any other assembly that we use for corridors. All right, so first thing I want to do is I want to show you what this assembly looks like. So I'm going to click into this view here, and I'm going to right click on my assembly that it's generated for me, and I'm going to go to Zoom to, and it shows me that assembly. Now it's generated this automatically for me. All right, so this is the rehab portion of my pavement. So what if I want to add another lane? All right, so I can go here to lane or number of lanes here on the left, and I can tell it I want to add 2 lanes. All right, I hit enter. And then what I need to remember, notice here on the left in my prospector that it shows that my corridor needs to be rebuilt. You could rebuild it here, and this is what you're going to get. If you hit apply, it shows this lane is coming back on itself. That's because we need to go in and set a target for the inside edge of this lane. All right. We have set the lane width target on the original lane. So now we need to set this one also so that it knows where to actually apply the edge of this lane. You can see here in the preview of the assembly that it generated automatically that it is applying the lane correctly. We just have to target it. All right. So let's go into the plan view here. I'm just going to click here in this view, and we will go to our line work here. All right, and remember, this is being added on the left-hand side, so this is the left side. All right. So I want to add the targeting for this edge, for this lane. So I'm going to go in here and select inside edge of lane offset target. All right. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to select from the drawing that same target that I used for the lane width target on my lane 1. I'll pick these 2 and I'll make sure that I got the right 2. I'll hit enter and I'll hit OK. Now I should just be able to hit apply, and it adds that lane on and it looks correct. All right, so it knows where it's at. Now we could target that outside edge of that lane also if we had something to stick it to, like a feature line or a poly line. If you use feature lines right now, you need to just make sure that they're not set to be dynamic. So if we pull a feature line from the corridor, just have it extract the feature line and then make it non-dynamic, and then you can add it as a target. So I could keep adding lanes. I don't have very much existing ground information here on the left or the right, so I don't want to put too much on. But on the right-hand side, which is this side, I just want to add a simple daylight tool. So I could actually add curb and then daylight it from there. And since this is just a demonstration, we'll do just that. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and zoom back to my assembly, and I want to add a curb right here on the right. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up my tool palette, and I'm going to keep it pretty simple. All right, I'm going to select curbs, and I'm just going to select this urban curb gutter general, and we'll just add it in with the default values right now. You could fill this out just like you do in a regular corridor or a traditional corridor. I'll zoom in and I'll select that point right there on the edge of the lane. All right. I'll go ahead and hit enter and it'll accept it. but it hasn't rebuilt the corridor, so we have to apply that in order for it to be added. So you can see here, it added that curb section to the right side on my corridor and in my section views. So now I want to add something else. I want to add a daylighting assembly. So if I hit Control 3 again, and I look here, and I select, let's just use a basic daylighting tool. Let's use basic side slope cut ditch, and we'll just get rid of the ditch. We'll use the cut and fill slope to be 3:1, and we'll just zero out the ditch. And I'm going to just add that here on the edge of the back curb. We'll just daylight it from there. All right. And I will go ahead and hit enter. Now, if I bring my rehab parameters back, if I hit apply here, all right, it should give me a daylight. Well, it does not. Okay, and there's a reason for that. We haven't set any targets for this. So if I look here, I don't see my daylighting. Okay, so what I want to do is while I'm still in the Rehab Corridor Editor, I can go over here in the Prospector tab where it says Corridors, and I can select that Road Rehab Corridor and go to the properties of the corridor just like I would for any other corridor. I can select Set Targets, and I need to set a target to that surface, all right, or to my surface that I want to daylight to. Now you're going to see here that there's two different other subassemblies that are the rehab subassemblies that it's using, and they're set to daylight also. Do not change the daylighting for these. The Roadway Rehab tools, they need this set in order to make them work correctly. So all I need to do is just set the target for what I've added and hit OK, and it rebuilds the corridor, and you can see the daylighting right there. Okay, so you can see this daylight. I'll zoom in a little bit tighter so you can see it. All right, now what's this done to our corridor in our plan view? I'll go ahead and I'll scroll back, and I'll look down here, and you can see that it's generated our corridor for us, just like we had expected. Now we could have added a sidewalk after the curb and then daylighted, so on and so forth. For this particular demo, I didn't have enough topo to do that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just close this Rehab Parameters box. If you need it back, you can simply go up here to Rehab Parameters, and it'll open back up. All right, I'll move it over for right now. The next thing I want to talk about is the Rehab Manager. So in the Rehab Manager, let me open this up just a little bit more so you can see it better. We're able to take advantage of a couple different tabs in the Rehab Manager. One of them is cross slope correction reports, so we can see the corrected slope that it had to use in order to meet that ideal slope. We can also see the other parameters that it used for each individual station on both sides of the road for each lane on both sides of the road. So if I look here, I see L2, L1, and R1. Well, I can turn off L1 and R1 and just look at that information for that particular lane. So I can scroll down. I can actually move this down, and I can double click on a station, and it'll take me to that particular station, and I can see it in cross-section view. So I can move on down. I can select 2825. So I can continue to scroll through and look at the differences, the corrected slope, all the information that you have here. Now, I also have a milling and leveling report. All right. So this milling and leveling report gives me a lot of information about how the depths that I'm milling, the depths that I'm having to level, so on and so forth. So I can see here that at edge point 3 at this particular station, I'm milling 4.32 inches. All right, at edge point 2, I'm milling 3.6 inches, and edge point 1, I'm milling 4.8 or 4.5 inches. So we can get a lot of good information here at each, take it down to the every 5-foot offset level of information. I can change this to every 10 feet, and it will update my stations. All right, I can change it back to 5, and it goes back to 5. If I want to export a report, I can export that out as an XML document. All right, and this is what folks are traditionally used to looking at, so it gives us a nice report. I'll just go ahead and do this real quick. All right, so I'll dump it out here to my Road Rehab folder, and we'll just call this Road Rehab. Hit save, and then we can take a look at that report. And as you can see here, it gives you a Road Rehab XML file that you can go back and look at. If we'd like to go back and take a look at that report, that XML report, real quick, we can just select it, right click, and go to Open With, and select Internet Explorer. And it gives us a nice report that we can look back on, and we can actually send this report out and anybody can open it up because it does open very quickly and easily with Internet Explorer. So that's a quick, easy way that we can have a report that we can print out, take a look at, so on and so forth. So we'll close the Rehab Manager. Again, once you're done making edits and looking at the milling and leveling reports, things of that nature, you can just go up and hit close, and you're good to go. Now again, I want to stress to you that we can go in and edit this corridor much the same as what we did with a regular traditional type roadway corridor that we're used to generating inside of Civil 3D. So anything that you add to that particular cross section or that particular assembly, it's going to keep track of it right here. If you add a lane, automatically it'll throw it on there for you. Just got to remember to target it correctly, and we can continue to add individual pieces and parts as sub-assemblies like curb and daylighting tools to this automatically generated assembly. So as you can see, the interactive cross-section based workflows for milling, leveling, overlay, and the reporting that it gives us is a nice new feature inside of Civil 3D 2018.1. I hope the information in this video has helped you to understand one of the new features inside of Civil 3D 2018.1. I want to thank you for watching and have a great day.